Hi, friends. I I just had a call with a friend and piano student and someone with whom I'm also working on a creative project, or it's her project. I'm supporting her and coaching in some ways, and but the conversation today was so deep, and it sort of took us to a place where it's like it really opened up a new space in my own thinking about my work as well, and just my, all things all things creative, or the process overall, because there was something that was coming through in our kind of what I was calling almost like offline conversations. I mean, no conversation is ever offline in my experience, and especially when you're sharing a space with someone that's so intentional, where we know that we are part of what we're doing. The entire reason for our consistent meetings is to deepen our creative work, right? I mean, that's the bulk of the work, of the teaching work that I do, whether it's on piano or not. That type of intentional space creates really amazing conversations. And if, as a kind of sidebar to everything I'm saying right now, that's also one of the things that I'm most grateful for, and most grateful for having kind of discovered about myself and about the creative realm, is that that's a universe you can live in. You can have those conversations on a daily basis. You can live in a world where I spend multiple hours a day having exactly those conversations with people all over the country, all over the world, doing amazing things. And that energy, then that's what I'm doing with my time. That's my life. It's such an immense blessing. I can hardly articulate how lucky I feel, how grateful I feel for those conversations, and for the fact that that's consistently my work. Anyway, what has been coming up in our conversations recently is a sense of a certain kind of just holding the past, holding certain moments in the past and certain opportunities in the past in a new light, in the sense of feeling like there were these moments that where we missed something, where we missed an opportunity, didn't take the leap that we thought we should take, or that we on some level now it's that feeling of, oh, I wish I had, it's a feeling of regret. And I think it's interesting to me, the reason why I say this is that the conversation today really opened a space for me as well, is because that's a feeling that I have really kind of actively tried to avoid feeling. And even to the point of sometimes, it's like, because on one level, when you start doing not necessarily spiritual work, but when we do work that I would call kind of self-help, or just working on what we are manifesting in the world, there's a tendency, and I think it's a healthy one, to frame things in the positive, to frame everything, to frame our entire, in the recognition of the fact that everything is serving us. We can construe even painful events, and even events where we feel like we do regret something or we've missed something, we can construe them as events that have served us, and that maybe they're continuing to serve us now. But that moment of saying, oh, this thing that I regret is serving me in some way, can also, in this kind of like double-edged way, defend us against feeling the full impact of what it really means to have missed something, to have missed a moment, to have not taken the leap when we could have. And when I was recently reading Alice Walker's book, and she was emphasizing that very often when we have not received the love or the attention or the support or the fill in the blank as very young people, but rather we've received some form of projected, imprinted messaging from our parents, generally, families, whoever our responsible adults happen to be. We've received that instead. Then there are actually things that we can't go back and retrieve, and that grieving those things is healing. That's the penny that has really been dropping for me recently, and it sort of like dropped again today when I realized, of course everything is serving us, but I don't want to just say everything is serving me as a way of not having to feel what might be true, which is that I really regret this action, or not taking this action, or whatever the thing might be. If there is an underlying sense of, oh, this is something that I lost, this is something that I missed. If it's true what Alice Walker is saying, and my only recourse is to grieve that loss, my only healing is to grieve that loss, then spinning, it's not really spinning, but it's kind of like, but construing it as, well, I know on some level it's serving me. You hear how there's actually a kind of a defense in there? There's actually a defense against the pain of the regret. And if we defend against the pain of the regret, then we can't actually grieve. And if we can't actually grieve, then we're going to continue living our lives seeking in vain for that thing that we can't go back and retrieve. We're saddled with the impossible task of continuing to try to satisfy a desire or an instinct or some sort of impulse for something that we can't actually ever have. To grieve the loss would be to heal. But before we can grieve the loss, we have to admit that it's been lost. We have to not just say, oh, it's serving me. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that, because obviously that's true. And that's, a lot of times, that is actually exactly what we need to say about certain things, because it construes them correctly. It construes them as exactly the right thing that we, that is actually how we want to frame most of our experience, because at the end of the day, that's true. But I'm talking about a very kind of subtle emotional honesty and transparency to ourselves in how we hold events that we where we may feel some pain or loss, and leaning into this some of these insights, which to me, I wouldn't say that they're entirely new, but they're certainly emerging with a new clarity after reading Alice Walker, of actually allowing some of that pain in, allowing some of that grief, allowing myself to feel the loss of the event, or the loss of the thing, the loss of the love, the loss of the moment, so that I don't keep chasing that moment now, or that event, so that I don't have to keep I don't have to keep unsuccessfully trying to regain something that I can't actually have anymore. And the conversation that I just had, very just a short while ago with this dear friend of mine was really kind of, it was a lot of that. It was looking at both from her side and from mine to some degree, how looking at that complex, looking at this mechanism, and what does it mean to let those things show up? How much can we actually do that? How much can we actually allow ourselves to feel that loss? It's such an interesting thing, because on some level we're saying, it's like admitting the tragedy of life. It's like admitting that our life isn't perfect, that we can't have everything we want, that we don't always do what we wish we did. It's admitting things that are hard to admit sometimes. But I think what I take from it all is that there's a sense of, what is so empowering and what is so encouraging about what Alice Walker is saying is that there is healing to be had. And if we see it that way, then accepting that deep pain and accepting that loss actually becomes an attractive option. It becomes something that's not like, oh, I need to go and do it doesn't become a dark thing, even though it's clearly a kind of it's something, it's a reckoning of a sort. But it's actually a beautiful form of surrender to reality, and it's a letting go of the hamster wheel of trying to make that happen in a way that is ultimately not going to be effective, because we're striving to regain something that we actually can't regain. The world's not designed that way. So, yeah, that's what showed up today, and that's what's top of mind, even as I look at the creative project that I'm up to my eyeballs in right now, and other projects as well. Obviously, this doesn't just apply to creative projects, it applies to anything in our life. So I guess I offer that to reflect on and to consider and to end. It's this interesting dual offering of hope in the hopelessness, right? Because if we keep having hope, I've had many spiritual teachers say hope is one of the most pernicious things, because hope is, oh, well, I hope down the road I'll get there. If I just keep looking for this thing long enough, I know that it's meant to be mine. Maybe. But what if that's the hamster wheel of trying to regain the thing that we've lost? In that sense, hope is actually our enemy. Hopelessness, letting go of hope, is where the healing begins. And out of healing comes a whole different definition of hope, a whole different relationship to everything is serving us. So yeah, that's what I offer today. Thank you for watching. I love you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.